Friends, we are going to see today gestational trophoblastic disease. You all know that pregnancy has syncytial trophoblast and cytotrophoblast as trophoblastic tissue, and these diseases, it's a big spectrum which involves from benign to malignant disorder or proliferative abnormality of this cytotrophoblastic or syncytial trophoblastic tissue, in toto trophoblastic tissue. So by definition, GTD means a spectrum of proliferative abnormality of the trophoblast of pregnancy. The classification says herediform mole, or the other name is vesicular mole. This would be complete or partial. I have purposefully written these two things over here so that throughout the class you will have this as a pictorial memory, and you will never forget that the chromosomal pattern of complete mole is 46XX, and in partial mole there is a triploidy. That three groups are present. MCQ point of view, this is very important, so please don't forget these two things. You cannot really afford to forget this. Then there is invasive mole, then there is placental site trophoblastic tumor, and then last variety, which is the most malignant cancer, that is choriocarcinoma. So let's see one by one. Herediform mole, it's an abnormal condition of placenta where there are partially degenerative and partially proliferative changes in the young chorionic villi take place. There is formation of cluster of small cyst, hydatid like cyst which are thin walled and contain fluid. It's a benign neoplasm of chorion, but it has malignant potential. Understand, students, that trophoblastic tissue is the one which helps implantation of the embryo. It's a tissue which helps in placental formation. This is a tissue which has this, normally they have this capacity of eroding any tissue and eroding the blood vessels, forming the legs, which is physiologically required for materno-fetal blood transfusion, exchange of substances. So this they have as an inherent capacity to erode the tissue. And now we are talking about uncontrolled growth of this tissue which originally has this capacity. So think that it's a benign neoplasm, H mole is a benign neoplasm of chorion, but it has a malignant potential. The incidence is maximum in Oriental countries and Southeast countries. Southeast countries, even in more than in India, it's maximum in Philippines. Developing countries. So if the MCQ comes that whether it is common in developed or developing, you have the answer is developing countries. It's 1 in 80 pregnancies in Philippines, and in India the incidence is 1 in 400 pregnancies. It's highest in teenage pregnancy, vary with the region and the race. Women over 35 years with high parity are again, there is chance of having herediform mole. Probably faulty nutrition is the cause, deficiency of protein or folic acid or carotene. Disturbed maternal immune system is there is raised gamma globulin, or they are seen in specific blood groups, maybe when there are no ABO antibodies. Cytogenetic abnormalities, in complete mole, higher the ratio, greater the molar change. So in complete mole, it is 2:0, paternal chromosomes in pair, 2, and maternal absent. This tells you importance of having a mother. If mother and maternal chromosomes are absent, no baby can be formed, only a mole can be formed. So this is how you can remember. If maternal chromosomes are absent, a baby cannot form. Even though father tries to duplicate its own chromosomes, there can be 46XX, but they are of no use. There will be no baby, only cysts would be formed. So again, to remember, mother is very important to have a baby. Partial mole, the ratio is 2:1. 2 paternal, 1 maternal. So excessive father is also not done. There has to be 1 maternal pair and 1 paternal. If paternal is available in 2, that causes triploidy, and that leads to partial mole. There would be baby, but there would be presence of molar tissue along with it. Cytogenetic abnormality, again to stress the same point. In complete mole, there is androgenesis. What is androgenesis? When the fusion takes place, complete set, 1 from mother, one from father, they come together and form either 46XX or 46XY. But if maternal chromosome, they vanish and haploid sperm duplicates its own chromosomes after meiosis, it forms mole. Commonly, it is 46XX, almost in 85%, but it can be 46XY or 45X. In partial mole, there is one set from mother and two paternal haploid chromosomes, they unite, and thus there is triploidy. So please focus on these important things. Then what happens? What exactly is the pathology? It's a disease of chorion. There is death of the ovum and embryo fails to grow. The secretions from this hyperplastic cells and transfer substances from the maternal blood, they just accumulate in stroma of the villi, which are devoid of blood vessels. Results in distension of the villi to form small vesicles. This vesicular fluid is interstitial fluid and is almost similar to ascitic or edema fluid, but it is rich in HCG, human chorionic gonadotrophin hormone. Mass filling the uterus is made up of chains or clusters of these small vesicles, and that is why it is called as vesicular mole, or they look like hydatid cyst. That's why they are called as hydatiform mole. In complete mole, there is no trace of embryo or amniotic sac. The full of the uterus would be just filled with these small vesicles, and there would be blood clots because of disruption of vesicles. Now coming to a very important point, what are the pathological changes found when we do a histopathological examination of these vesicles? In complete mole, there would be diffuse. Please don't forget this word. Whenever I say complete, it has to be diffuse. Diffuse hydropic degeneration of all the villi. There is diffuse trophoblastic hyperplasia or proliferation. There would be marked thinning of the sternal tissue and absence of blood vessels of villi, but still the villus pattern is maintained. Why I am telling this is important, because you will have MCQ saying what are the changes which takes place in H mole, and then you have to select the right option which is not there. So diffuse, complete mole, focal, partial mole, villi pattern maintained, we are talking about molar pregnancy. Villus pattern absent suggests choriocarcinoma. So remember this point. Then there would be presence of bilateral ovarian cyst in 50% of the patients. Now why the cysts are there? As we all know, trophoblast, they are the source of secretion of beta HCG, HCG. HCG has alpha unit, beta unit. Beta is specific, alpha acts as LH, acts as TSH. So because of that, because of these high titers of HCG, there is stimulation of ovaries that leads to bilateral cyst formation, big ovaries with multicystic cysts. These are called as theca lutein cyst. They contain fluid which is again rich in HCG. They also contain estrogen and progesterone. And as we evacuate the vesicular mole, gradually as the hormonal level goes down, LH levels goes down, and then there would be regression of these cysts, but over a period of 1 to 2 months. How does this mole present? The presentation is usually the lady comes with amenorrhea, but along with amenorrhea, there would be either bleeding, abnormal vaginal bleeding, there can be lower abdominal pain, all symptoms of pregnancy which are normally there, in early gestation, because we are talking about second trimester or maybe late first trimester. That's the duration when the patients usually present. So at that time we have emesis gravidarum, we have hyperemesis gravidarum. In second trimester, late second trimester, maybe PI starts. But in vesicular mole, all these pregnancy symptoms will be exaggerated. I am talking about complete mole. In complete mole, all the early pregnancy symptoms are exaggerated. There would be hyperemesis gravidarum because of increased HCG. There would be features of early onset preeclampsia. Preeclampsia, that is PIH, usually after 24 weeks, but here less than 20 weeks we will find that patient's blood pressure is high. Uterus would be either more than the gestational weeks or it would be less than the gestational weeks. On examination, you will find that no fetus can be palpable. No fetal heart can be heard. Sometimes the patient will give history of even passing some grape-like structures, that is these vesicles. Sometimes patient may not have these symptoms, but she'll come with breathlessness. Because as this tissue has power of invasion, they may invade the blood vessels and get embolized to the lungs. And in lungs, if embolization takes place, she will come with breathlessness symptoms. Because of HCG, like LH, it has TSH-like action. So sometimes patient has thyrotoxicosis-like symptoms, including tremors and tachycardia and everything. So it gives a dramatic picture that either with pregnancy-related symptoms, just plain amenorrhea with vaginal bleeding or maybe passage of some vesicles, or sometimes exaggerated pregnancy symptoms like excessive vomitings, blood pressure raised early, or the symptom would be of thyrotoxicosis, or there would be embolism and breathlessness as the primary symptom. Clinical features, you will see early signs of pregnancy on examination, but she would be pale because even though sometimes she will not have external vaginal bleeding, inside the uterus, as these villi are eating up everything, there is a disruption of vessels and a lot of blood clots collected inside. So she would be mostly pale, and this pallor would be out of proportion to the blood loss which is visible. There would be features of preeclampsia. Per abdomen, size of uterus would be either more than the gestational age or smaller, or it can be same. But the feel would be doughy. You will not feel any fetal part inside. External ballotment will be absent. No fetal heart would be heard. So that these all clinical findings will suggest us that we are dealing with abnormal pregnancy, and that can be vesicular mole. If you do vaginal examination, you may find some vesicles in the vagina, some bleeding, and PV examination in the fornix, most of the times you feel that there are big cysts present, and these are theca lutein cyst. The size is more than 6 centimeter most of the times. Now, what investigations you would like to do? Naturally, you want to know her blood group because she is pale. Hemogram to know her hemoglobin. Liver function tests, renal function test, thyroid function tests are important. But the investigation which is going to confirm this is ultrasound. Ultrasound and a typical snowstorm pattern on ultrasound. This was actually the picture when the machines were of older variety. The pattern used to show as if a snowstorm has come. The echogenic reflections. So ultrasound is the investigation of choice which confirms. It tells us that there is no baby inside. That's the first thing. Then it shows those snowstorm appearance because of the vesicles present. And we can also confirm our diagnosis from beta HCG level, serum beta HCG level. It will support the diagnosis as well as it will have prognostic value. When we treat, the levels of beta HCG we want to fall. So it has prognostic value, and it suggests us whether we are going to have a malignant condition later or we have completely cured the disease in benign state only. Serum beta HCG level, sometimes it can be more than 1 lakh international units. On ultrasound, as I said, snowstorm appearance. In books, it is mentioned that we may do X-ray abdomen, which is practically not done. X-ray will show that uterus is more than 16 weeks, but there is no fetal shadow. Rather than X-ray abdomen, I would say X-ray chest is more important to rule out any metastasis to the lungs. If there is pulmonary embolism, we will get the classical picture. Definite diagnosis is made by histological examination. When we collect the vesicles and we send it for a histopathological examination, and that tells us that the diagnosis is definite. CT MRI can be used. What are the complications? As we know, lots of blood supply, pregnancy, villi eating up, disruption of vessels, hemorrhage and shock, most common complication. If infection gets introduced, it will lead to sepsis. This mole, which has a capacity of chewing up the tissue or invading any tissue, can lead to perforation of uterus. Preeclampsia, very common. Acute pulmonary embolism or pulmonary inefficiency, again very common. Coagulation failure. And last but very important, that after molar pregnancy, which is a benign condition, that woman always have a threat that later in life she may develop choriocarcinoma. So it can be a late complication of H-mole. Risk factors for malignancy means how can we say that which woman is likely to develop choriocarcinoma and which woman is less likely to develop choriocarcinoma later. So the risk factors are, if age of the woman is more than 40 years, if her parity is more, she has more than 3 children and now vesicular pregnancy, if her initial serum beta hCG levels are more than 1 lakh milli-international units per ml, the uterus is 20 weeks and more in size, if she has prior history of molar pregnancy and this is recurrence, and if she has bilateral theca lutein cysts which are more than 6 cm in size, all these factors tell us that she has a great risk of having choriocarcinoma later. That's why we have to manage this pregnancy right now, but always keep in mind that we have to keep a watch whether she will develop choriocarcinoma later. Now, how are we going to manage this vesicular mole? The treatment is under anesthesia, suction evacuation or dilatation and evacuation. We have to evacuate the uterine cavity and take out these vesicles either by suction or dilatation. Uterus is big in size, lots of hCG, very soft. We need big cannula. So sometimes we have to prior dilate the cervix, or most of the times now we dilate the cervix and suction at the same setting. But it is always better to start an oxytocin drip before we start with suction evacuation. Because with suction, these vesicles are going to get sucked out very quickly and the uterine cavity will get empty. But if it doesn't retract as per the requirement, there would be lots of blood loss. So we want the uterus to have that contractility when we are going to go ahead with suction and evacuation. So always we give IV fluids, we arrange for blood, if necessary give blood before if she is too anemic, then start the oxytocin drip and then go ahead with suction evacuation. It is done usually, all the time it is done under general anesthesia. While giving anesthesia, we have to remember this patient has thyrotoxicosis like features. Because of increased hCG, she has increased TSH. So she may land up in thyroid crisis during anesthesia. So it's a very important point to remember, thyroid storm. Once we dilate the cervix, put a suction cannula inside, switch on the vacuum machine and suck out the products, that means the vesicles in that. Because of oxytocin drip in heavy concentration, the uterus retracts very fast and gradually we take out. We can even keep our hand on the abdominal cavity and feel the uterus decreasing, shrinking in size. Once we get the feel that the uterus is almost empty, we can take out the suction cannula after switching off the machine once the products stop coming, and then there is a role of curettage to confirm that the cavity is totally empty. It's little debatable issue whether the curettage is to be performed immediately after suction or it is to be performed after 7 days. Some people say it is better to do right now at the same stage when suction is done so that we can confirm the cavity is completely empty, and whatever tissue we get, we can send it for histopathological examination to confirm whether it has invaded the myometrium, whether it is invasive mole or any avascular pattern it has. Some are of the opinion that because of lots of hCG, the uterus is so very soft that if we do curettage at that particular moment, there is very high risk of perforating the uterus. So they say that just do suction evacuation and wait till 7 days and then go for curettage. Complications of this, there can be acute pulmonary insufficiency because of pulmonary embolism of trophoblastic tissue, because we are going to disturb it. So the thrombus or the embolus can get dislodged and get into pulmonary system, leading to pulmonary embolism. Thyroid storm, the presentation can be hyperthermia, delirium, convulsion and sudden cardiovascular collapse because of increased TSH like action. So when we are doing evacuation, we have to keep blood ready, give beta blockers, be prepared for embolism or thyroid storm, and evacuate the cavity gently with lots of care because she has increased risk of perforation. The other treatment mode can be hysterotomy, in which we open the uterus with an incision and evacuate the uterine cavity, but this is very rarely done. Only indications are if the patient has profuse uncontrolled bleeding where we have no time, but more than that, the indication is if the cervix is really very unfavorable. We just are unable to dilate the cervix to put in the suction cannula. In that case, we go for hysterotomy, which is very rare. Other optional treatment is hysterectomy. That if she has a molar pregnancy, we know that she has a risk of either of these later. So in that case, we can directly go for hysterectomy. Indications: age more than 35 years, which is practically not really possible. Every woman after 35 years really doesn't want to sacrifice her uterus. Completed family, no. But high risk for malignancy. In that case, if her score is, she's very high risk for having malignancy, then we can always put forth this option as a treatment. Discuss, counsel the patient, tell the advantages and disadvantages, and let them choose. Ovaries are to be conserved whenever you are doing hysterectomy. Uterus has to be sent for histopathological diagnosis to confirm that it is only mole and nothing else. And we need to follow up with serum beta hCG levels. The levels have to fall gradually so that we know we have treated it completely. Prophylactic chemotherapy with methotrexate. Once we say GTD is equal to methotrexate. This is a very chemosensitive tumor. Complete cure is possible and methotrexate is the drug of choice. So in case if our patient we have evacuated but she falls in high risk group for developing malignancy, we should always consider prophylactic chemotherapy. The indications: high risk patient. Other indications that we are monitoring her beta hCG level after evacuation. They are either plateauing, means the fall is not as per the expected fall, or the levels suddenly start rising. In that case also we should give prophylactic chemotherapy. If there is any evidence of metastasis like in the lungs, if we find that the metastasis has taken place, it's better to give chemotherapy. And in case if patient is not going to follow with you, she is a patient from some remote place, you are not sure whether she'll come for follow-up again. So in that case, it's better to give prophylactic chemotherapy. The follow-up of molar patient is to be done. Clinical examination, the uterine size. Every time she comes, we should see that the uterus is regressing in size. Ovarian cyst, they should also regress. We should do ultrasound and chest x-ray on follow-up to see what is the regression of uterus and cyst. Chest x-ray for any metastasis. Serum beta hCG levels every weekly initially. Till for 3 weeks, the levels are normal. So first, once the molar evacuation is done, we'll be doing beta hCG weekly. They will gradually slow down. Then the levels will be normal. Then still repeat the level weekly till 3 levels come normal. Then monthly. Then if it's normal, then for 6 months, after 6 months again confirm that the levels are normal. Such women for a while would need some contraception, and this is a very again examiner's favorite question, that which contraception you would suggest to a patient who had vesicular mole. When the patient we are following after evacuation, we want a contraceptive which will not interfere with the hormonal level, that is hCG level. Again, that contraceptive should not cause symptoms like abnormal bleeding, because that will suggest that she has some persistent GTD or some other problems. So the contraception of choice is barrier. Previously people were little apprehensive about combined ossipals, but now they are recommending combined ossipals. They don't really interfere with the hormonal decrease. IUCD is contraindicated. Progesterone only pills are contraindicated because they may cause abnormal or irregular bleeding, and that may make us think that are we dealing with any malignancy. Now coming to partial mole. In partial mole there is triploidy. We have made this clear. There is one set of maternal and 2 paternal haploid chromosomes. The difference is in partial mole there would be presence of some fetal tissue. In complete mole, absolutely no. On pathology, there would be focal hydropic degeneration of villi. In complete, I told you there would be diffuse. In partial, focal. Focal trophoblastic hyperplasia and proliferation would be seen. There would be marked villus scalloping and stromal trophoblastic inclusions would be present. If the fetus is present in case of partial mole, usually the growth is never normal. Either it has severe IOGR or it has multiple anomalies. They may be like syndactyly or hydrocephalus. In clinical presentation of partial mole, in opposition to the complete mole, presentation is always subdued. All the symptoms would be subdued. Uterus, the size would be less. No cysts usually. Beta HCG, there would be only small rise. Medical complications are uncommon. It has low malignant potential. Diagnosed only on histology of the tissue. And persistent trophoblastic disease will be seen only in 1 to 5%. And very rarely there would be choriocarcinoma. So partial mole is kind of subdued variety of complete mole. So I think we will stop here, and rest of the part of GTD we will see in next session. Thank you.